Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage at this very early hour for some of us. We are broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our Adam Bernstein is out fending off the wildlife here at the KSC press site, preparing to track the rocket, also doing some still photography as well. Our Michael Caine has this evening off. However, if you'd like to keep up with their launch photography on social media, you can find them both on X. Michael Caine at MD Caine Jr., Adam Bernstein at A Bern NYC, Bern with an E. And also, if you're not already following Spaceflight Now, you can find us on many of the socials. We're on X, Threads, Facebook, and of course, right here on YouTube. Right now, in the center of your screen, you're taking a look at SpaceX's workhorse vehicle, a Falcon 9 rocket standing at the heart of Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40. In T minus 59 minutes, 18 seconds and counting, SpaceX is preparing to launch 6-47 mission. This will be the 22nd dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites this year. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 5:12 a.m. Eastern Time. For our viewers joining us from around the world, that is 0912 UTC. And we do know that the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center, which activates ahead of all launches, did go ahead and activate at 4 a.m. this morning in preparation for this mission. As long as SpaceX has not started fueling, they do have a launch window that extends out to 6:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time this morning. So again, as long as they have not started fueling, they do have a little bit of wiggle room in the window remaining yet this morning. I know it's still quite early for a lot of folks, so in order to help more people find this live coverage for whomever may be up and about, either those up late into the night or those up very early in the morning, or just joining us from around the world at a much more reasonable hour, be sure to hit the like button here on this video, share the stream. That allows more folks to find this live coverage in this pre-dawn hour here on the Eastern Coast. Before we roll on too much this morning, I also want to give a shout out to our moderators in the live chat. I see Stephanie B working hard from Australia. Good day, Stephanie. Hope you're doing well. Guessing most of the other mods are probably asleep at this hour. Can't say I blame them. So everyone say good morning to Stephanie or give her a shout there. We're also powered by our other wonderful channel members. So thanks to folks for soldiering on this morning. Folks like Butterfly, Cheryl Robinson, Bush Productions, JC Martinez, and LA Mom, Jack Gallman, Robert Strongfox, and many others. Really appreciate y'all being with us this morning. Josh King as well. I see you there. Hope you're doing well. Of course, channel members help power what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and the ability to watch all of our Cape-based launches in 4K. Last but not least, if you'd like to help support what we do here at Spaceflight Now beyond channel membership or aside from channel membership, and you have a comment or question you'd like to pose to us, you can also use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will he be helping support the channel, but she'll also give us something interesting to talk about as we continue to cruise on through the count, just 55 minutes away from the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. We're now about 20 minutes or so away from the point at which the launch director give their go for the start of propellant load for tonight's mission. If you're new to the channel or haven't been with us for a recent launch, and it's been quite a while since this was the case, but SpaceX is not providing mission audio for the full duration of the count, just the final 5 minutes. So we will lean on our extensive experience in covering SpaceX and their Falcon 9 flights to guide you through the count, talk about some of the visual cues that we are looking for to identify that things are likely on track. SpaceX is running its countdown from its Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center. It's the facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters to prepare them for future flights, as is the case with this vehicle. SpaceX also has support for this launch from its headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Once again, this morning's launch of the Starlink 6-47 mission is targeting liftoff at 5:12 a.m. Eastern, 09:12 UTC. And as previously stated, if they have not started fueling, they do have some backup opportunities within this window that lasts until 6:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And if for whatever reason a launch this morning just isn't in the cards, SpaceX does have multiple backup opportunities coming up tomorrow, Saturday, April 6th, starting at 1:51 a.m. Eastern. Given that it is now the 5th of April, I would be remiss if I did not wish all the Trekkies in the audience a happy first contact day to all who celebrate. Weather pretty ideal for the launch this morning. These pre-dawn hours here on the East Coast. 45th Weather Squadron forecast about 90% favorable weather conditions at liftoff. The two watch items that they're looking at are the thick cloud layers rule, as well as the liftoff winds. Meteorologists are also tracking the upper level wind shear, which they describe as being between low and moderate levels. The 24-hour backup, if needed, does look slightly better at liftoff. Weather 95% favorable, with the only watch item being the liftoff winds tomorrow. Upper level winds in the 24-hour backup are also a lesser concern. Taking a look at the live chat, I'm not sure who asked it. I lost track of the question. Apologies to whoever actually asked it, but we did have a question about the Delta IV Heavy launch and what was up with that. That mission is currently targeting liftoff from Space Launch Complex 37 coming up this Tuesday afternoon. We've reached out to both Air Liquide, which is the contractor for NASA that manages the gaseous nitrogen pipeline that had the issue, as well as reached out to folks at KSC themselves. We are waiting to hear more back from Kennedy Space Center as far as their assessment of how they approach the fix to be able to launch that mission coming up on Tuesday. So we are still waiting to hear back from them, hoping to get some kind of response over the course of today. Do have a statement that I'll read you part of from Air Liquide, who's been working at the Cape for several decades. They say in part, quote, Air Liquide confirms that a pump failure occurred on March 28th at its nitrogen plant supplying NASA's Space Launch System. Air Liquide worked diligently with NASA to understand the circumstances and resolve the situation and is prepared on site to support the rescheduled launch of the Delta IV Heavy rocket. Again, we are working to get some more details on what exactly they mean by being prepared, what the fixes were with more specificity. And of course, we will pass on what we learn as we learn it. And DJ Miguel, thanks for posing that question. I know that's popped up for a number of folks, so hope that clears things up, at least to a certain extent. I know T minus 49 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. Just a little more than 10 minutes away from the point at which the launch director will make the call on the start of prop load, assuming SpaceX is in a good position to do that. For liftoff, since a number of folks have been asking even before we started the live stream, let's go ahead and talk about trajectory, let you know where this rocket is going to fly once it leaves the pad. Again, this is the mission Starlink 6-47, sending up 23 more Starlink V2 mini satellites. The Falcon 9 rocket's going to be lifting off from Slick 40, Space Launch Complex 40, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, as has been the case and will continue to be the case for Shell 6 of the Starlink constellation. The rocket will fly in a southeast trajectory toward the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the booster will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. We've got 2 here on the East Coast, and the one on deck tonight is a shortfall of gravitas. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. Payload fairings will jettison just a little bit down range of the map you see here on your screen. SpaceX has 2 East Coast recovery vessels used to scoop up the fairing halves. Tonight, they're using Doug. It and the other recovery vessel, Bob, of course, named after the duo who flew the Demo 2 mission back in May 2020, those being Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. SpaceX very much values being able to reuse its payload fairings. By value, I mean it's worth about $6 million in value every time they recover these payload fairings. You can see in this image from a presentation earlier this year that they splashed down under parachutes, and they're scooped up by either the recovery vessels here on the East Coast or the ones out in California. This is an image of what that recovery process looks like. We're now T minus 45 minutes. 57 seconds and counting. I want to thank Christopher Jones, one of our wonderful channel members, for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that, Christopher. Thanks so much for the support this morning. Now that we know where the rocket is going, let's talk about the milestones that are going to take us through to the point of getting to launch. Let's go through the countdown timeline here. Of course, the milestone we're still waiting for comes up at T minus 38 minutes or thereabouts. Could come slightly earlier if SpaceX teams are in a good position. But generally speaking, 38 minutes prior to liftoff, the launch director will have the call on the pole for the start propellant load. Assuming that go ahead is given, prop load begins T minus 35 minutes, loading of RP1 or rocket grade kerosene onto both the first and the second stages of the vehicle. At the same time, liquid oxygen is loaded on board the Falcon 9 first stage. T minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen load will begin on the second stage, but before that, at about T minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds, give or take, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back as the feed lines are chilled there at the pad. At T minus 7 minutes, chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps and protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, strong back retract sequence begins. It'll be just a little bit before this point also when we'll start getting mission audio from SpaceX and some pad views as well from right there at the pad. Strong back retract begins with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up and the transporter erector of the strong back will recline about a degree and a half away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen load should be complete. At that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director gives their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the bird at T0. Again, that point is targeted at 5:12 a.m. Eastern, 0912 UTC. As here, Adam Bernstein has hopped into moderator mode here in the live chat, addressing a question from DJ Miguel. I'll just amplify that for those who may be listening but not reading all the messages in the live chat. Yes, the weather is looking pretty idyllic here at the press site as we are now T minus 41 minutes, 46 seconds and counting before liftoff. It looks like channel member Jonas is checking in from, I believe that's the Swedish flag, right, Jonas? Hello to all of those joining us from Sweden. And if that's not the Swedish flag, please correct me because I do not have the flags of the world memorized, and I'd love to get educated and come correct next time. We are now T minus 40 minutes and counting, just a couple minutes away from the SpaceX launch director making the call on the start of prop load this evening. Again, we won't hear that call out, but hopefully we'll get word from SpaceX that fueling has begun. Otherwise, we will let you know what we are keeping a visual eye out for as fueling gets underway. If you take a look at the Falcon 9 booster here on your screen, and you see near the base of the Falcon 9 rocket, about if you compare it next to the crew access tower just to the right of it, you see those lights on the right hand side of the tower. You go up about one, two, three of those bright white lights, and then go perpendicular to that on the Falcon 9 rocket. You see sort of a light a lighter gray band near the base of the vehicle. It's right about that point when liquid oxygen load starts, or a couple minutes into that, where we start to see some frost form and a little bit of vapor in that area. So that's the spot on the rocket that you want to be looking for as a visual indication that fueling has begun. Again, we're about 40 seconds or so away from that poll being conducted. As you continue to step through the count, appreciate the little over 860 of you that are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Allow some more folks to find our live coverage this morning. I know it's a very odd hour for folks here in the United States, but maybe we can bring in some of our friends from overseas in the Europe and Australian areas and elsewhere as well. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to Spaceflight now is a good time to do so, as we have several launches on tap in the next several days here. Of course, right now you're watching live coverage of the Starlink 6-47 mission. Coming up later on tonight, we'll have our coverage begin on the Starlink 8-1 mission, which is set to launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. If they're able to pull it off, it'll be a record turnaround for SpaceX and Slick 4 East out there at Vandenberg. That mission also notable because, well, not only because it'll be a record turnaround, but it also features 6 more direct-to-cell capable Starlink satellites as part of that batch of 21 Starlinks. SpaceX has done a number of testing and proving out the viability of its direct-to-cell capabilities, which we will talk more about during that launch coverage. We've got that coming up in the hours of Friday night into Saturday morning, depending on your point of view in the world. And then on Sunday, first of its kind rideshare mission for SpaceX, similar to the transporter missions that launch from Vandenberg. This one's called Bandwagon. And instead of going to a sun synchronous orbit, these will go to a mid inclination orbit. That mission launching from Pad 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center on Sunday. And then, of course, you got the finale of United Launch Alliance's Delta IV Heavy rocket. That's, as previously mentioned, lifting off on Tuesday. And finally, on the 10th, no earlier than midnight, we'll have another Starlink launch from the pad you see here on your screen. It'll be Starlink 6-48. So lots of launches to cover, and we hope you'll be back with us. So again, now's a good time to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon when you do, and turn on all notifications so you get alerted whenever we go live for launches or post new videos here to the channel. We're now T minus 35 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Just a few seconds away, really, from the start of fueling, if SpaceX has given the go ahead for prop load. We're also getting tantalizingly close to 200,000 subscribers, so we'd love it if you help us reach that goal. I think we can do it by the time we get to Delta 4 on Tuesday, but we'll need all of you to pull it off. So please subscribe to the channel and share to a friend if you haven't already. Now, T minus 34 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. If the go ahead was in fact given, prop load is now underway on the Falcon 9 rocket. Again, be looking toward that slightly lighter grayish ring there you see near the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. We'll be keeping our eye out for signs of frost and or vapor in that area as well. We do have word from SpaceX that propellant load has in fact begun. So the company is targeting a T0 liftoff again at 5:12 a.m. Eastern this morning, 0912 UTC. Because fueling has begun, SpaceX is committing to an attempt at that time, or if for some reason something were to happen in the next 33 minutes, 21 seconds, they would need to stand down and target that backup opportunity on Saturday morning. SpaceX's fueling operation is known as a load and go. Basically, because they use super cold propellant in the way that they do, they need to fuel just about as close as possible to liftoff. So they don't really have any options to hold the countdown once fueling has begun. Want to thank David the Yorkshire man for a £2 super chat saying, "Morning from Yorkshire, UK. Good luck." Thank you so much, David, for supporting us this morning. Hope all is well with you. We're now T minus 30 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. Again, if you're just popping into the live stream here, SpaceX has begun fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket supporting the Starlink 6-47 mission, which means they are committing tonight, or this morning rather, to a launch attempt at 5:12 a.m. Eastern, 0912 UTC. At this point of the countdown, a little less than 30 minutes to go, launch teams are loading cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Cryogenic helium will also be loaded on board the storage tanks for the second stage at about T minus 25 minutes. The Falcon 9 booster that's launching tonight is going for its 14th flight today. Once upon a time, that would put you right at the top of the launch leader list, but that is quite some time since it's been there. As we continue to step down through the count before Booster 1069 launches on this mission, let's go ahead, step back through time and let you know the missions that it previously flew before it adds one more to that list. This booster first came into rotation on December 21st, 2021 for a mission to the International Space Station. That was the Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-24 mission. That was followed on August 28th, 2022 with the launch of this booster's first Starlink mission. That was Group 4-23. Flight number 3 came on October 15th, 2022 when it launched the Hotbird 13F satellite. It and another Utel satellite would go on to replace Hotbird 8, 9, and 10 at the company's 13-degree east position. The fourth launch came on December 8th, 2022. That was the launch number 15 for OneWeb, sending up a batch of satellites for its internet constellation. Those satellites also manufactured right here on Florida's Space Coast at the Airbus OneWeb satellite facility on Merritt Island. Launch number 5 came on February 2nd, 2023. That was the Starlink 5-3 mission. It was followed up by a launch for Luxembourg-based company SES. That was for their satellites 18 and 19, which launched on March 17th. And launches 7 through 13 have all been Starlink missions. Those were 5-6 on May 4th, 5-12 on June 23rd, 6-9 on August 11th, 6-19 on September 30th, 6-28 on November 18th, 6-36 on December 29th, and most recently, you got Starlink 6-39 on February 25th. Which, of course, sets us up for the next mission to add to that roster, Starlink 6-47. Coming up, 26 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. Seeing a good bit more vapor now as fueling continues, about 10 minutes into the process so far. We're now T minus 24 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. As more and more Starlinks are deployed into the constellation in low Earth orbit, SpaceX continues to add more companies to the roster that have access to the service. This is what the current coverage map looks like. Argentina was the most recent nation to be added. It was number 72, I believe. The light blue areas are where Starlink service is currently available. The darker blue shades are where service is either pending or in the process of being activated, and the dark gray countries are where it is just not available. T minus 22 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. Talking about the Starlink satellites on board, there are 23 of those V2 minis that are atop the Falcon 9 rocket. This will be the 22nd launch of Starlinks in 2024, each of them weighing at about 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, replacing the previously used Krypton thrusters. They were built in Redmond, Washington, which is nearest to Seattle. They'll be deployed at about 200 miles or 320 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. In a T minus 21 minutes, 52 seconds and counting, we're just a little over a minute away from the so-called big vent as the feed lines are chilled ahead of second stage LOX load. Taking a look at the live chat here, Tony Marquez, the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Tony. Appreciate the support this morning. Tony asks, when's the next one from Vandenberg going up? I live a few miles from there. Well, you'll be happy to know that you have less than a day to wait for the next flight from Vandenberg Space Force Base. SpaceX is currently targeting launch of the Starlink 8-1 mission. That's coming up in the overnight hours for us here on the East Coast. But for all y'all in California, liftoff is targeting 7:31 p.m. tonight. It's 10:31 p.m. Eastern or 02:31 UTC for our friends joining around the world. Again, that Starlink launch with 21 Starlinks on board will feature 6 more with direct-to-cell capabilities, bringing the total of the DTC Starlink satellites to a total of 12. The booster supporting that mission previously launched Crew 7, CRS-29, and PACE, among others. Now T minus 20 minutes, 10 seconds and counting, and you see the big vent is now underway. Good sign that fueling continues on track here. We're now T minus 16 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. The big vent is wrapping up here at Slick 40 as we are preparing for the start of LOX load in just about 15 seconds on the second stage, the Falcon 9 rocket. So far, fueling has remained on track and on time for a departure at 5:12 a.m. Eastern, 0912 UTC. We appreciate the more than 2,100 of you that are either staying up very late with us or getting up at a very early hour here in the United States, or if it's a much more reasonable time wherever you are. Very envious of that. But nonetheless, appreciate you being with us at this point in whatever time of day it is for you. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button, allow more folks in your neck of the woods to find our live coverage as we are cruising towards the top of the hour here. Just a little over 15 minutes away from launch of the Starlink 6-47 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station here in Florida. For those not as familiar with trajectories and rocket launch visibility, just because I know that question has come up in the live chat a number of times, unless you're in the central Florida or southern Florida area, as far as in the contiguous United States or in the Caribbean, you're not going to see this with your own eyes. So we appreciate you being here. We'll bring you the best possible views of this Falcon flight lifting off from Pad 40 here at the Cape. And again, for our viewers who are in Southern California or in Mexico over on the West Coast, be sure to keep an eye out for the launch of the Starlink 8-1 mission lifting off tonight, just a little after 7:30 Pacific time. DJ Miguel offering any epic space music for today's launch, says he's always available. Very tempting to take you up on that, DJ. However, we don't want a copyright strike on this video and to be demonetized. So, unfortunately, with respect, I think we're going to have to decline this morning. But if you've got some uncopyrighted beats, maybe we can talk later. I also want to welcome one of our other moderators to the live chat. I'm just seeing you here now, Rusty Shackelford. Good to have you with us this morning, joining alongside Stephanie B. Appreciate you being here. Respectfully, Carousel USA, we are a more sober news outlet. So I will gonna have to respectfully decline your request to sing some space tunes as we continue to roll on in through the count, but I appreciate the ask. Maybe someday. Of course, vehicle launching tonight in just a little over 12 minutes is SpaceX's workhorse, the Falcon 9 rocket. So let's get you acquainted with the vehicle before it lifts off 12 minutes from now. Falcon 9 stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is made up by the Falcon 9 first stage, the bottom two-thirds of the rocket. Today's booster has flown 13 times before, going for number 14 today. Designated tail number is 1069 in the SpaceX fleet. If you want a more up close view of those boosters for our Channel members, we actually have a video up on the feeds right now of one of the boosters, B-1076, cruising on into port past B-1067. Video just a little shy of 2 minutes. Again, available for members only. Views from Port Canaveral from earlier this week. Coming back to the Falcon 9 in a more broad sense, at the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines. They burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. This morning, they're using a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. It's a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core and surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image you see here on the right-hand side of your screen, those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These titanium winglets provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are three mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. First stage main engine cutoff. High pressure helium is used to release those latches. The four pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, kerosene, and liquid oxygen, same as the first stage. It will ignite a third time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites. There'll be a deorbit burn to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, as we come into just a little before T minus 9 minutes here on the flight, top of the Falcon 9 are the payload fairings, which contain the 23 Starlink satellites today. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material. They're 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairings will be recovered by the recovery vessel Doug, a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. As we showed you earlier, they gently splash down under parachutes. We're now T minus 8 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Just a little over a minute away from the engine chill down sequence beginning. Again, that's the process of sending a small amount of liquid oxygen through the Merlin engine turbo pumps, cools them down, and thermally conditions them ahead of engine start. Now T minus 6 minutes, 52 seconds and counting as that engine chill down is underway. I want to extend our appreciation to the now more than 3,800 of you that are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button to allow more folks to find this live coverage. And since we do have some new folks joining us, Going to go ahead and go back over trajectory one more time. Before we do, just want to say hello to some folks in the live chat. We appreciate all of you who are here with us. We should be getting views from the pad there at SpaceX Slick 40 in just about a minute or so. So let's go ahead and step through the trajectory before that happens. Of course, the Falcon 9 rocket's going to be lifting off from Pad 40 or Space Launch Complex 40, Slick 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Falcon 9 will follow this green line here. That's the flight path. We'll fly in a southeasterly trajectory with the first stage booster landing a little bit east of the Bahamas on the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. And again, the recovery vessel Doug will be used to scoop up the fairing halves following fairing separation. Leave that up for just a few more seconds before we get some
pressing for strong back retract.
Views from SpaceX, which you can hear, and now we can see getting some views from down there at the pad.
Strong back retract has started.
With that call for strong back retract, clamp arms underneath the payload fairings will open up. Transporter erector will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stay in that position until liftoff. You see that process happening there in the box on the left-hand side of your screen. Nice view of the crew access tower there. Speaking of crew, SpaceX pressing towards its next crew flight. They mentioned earlier this week that they're getting ready to go into vacuum chamber testing on the Crew Dragon spacecraft known as Resilience. That'll be supporting the launch and the mission of the Polaris Dawn flight, led by businessman Jared Isaacman, as well as 3 others. These private astronauts will take part in the first commercial spacewalk ever performed. Now less than 3 minutes to flight here. The Polaris Dawn mission set to launch sometime in the summer of this year. Yet to be determined if it will fly from Launch Complex 39A.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Where all other Crew Dragons with astronauts on board have lifted off from, or if it could be the first to launch from this pad now that the capabilities are available. Less than 2.5 minutes into this flight. The next call out we should be hearing will be for the conclusion of stage 2 LOX load. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully fueled ahead of its planned liftoff in about 1.5 minutes. Want to welcome in the more than 6,000 of you who are now watching with us live.
Ground gas closeouts.
Be sure to hit that like button, allow some more folks to find their way on in the last little over a minute before liftoff. T-minus 1 minute and counting.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Go for launch.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is in position to launch the Starlink 6-47 mission. 30 seconds to go.
T-minus 30 seconds.
20 seconds. And here we go in 10,
15
9,
seconds.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Entered ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-47 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower and is soaring above Florida's Space Coast. Now about 30 seconds into flight. The call to propulsion is nominal. Let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. Now a little over a minute into flight, the Falcon 9 supersonic traveling faster than the speed of sound. We throw passing through max Q now, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming up in rapid succession, there will be 3 events. About T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds will be first stage main engine cutoff or MECO. That'll be followed by stage separation, second stage engine start or SES1, and then fairing deployment just a little after 3 minutes. That call for MVAC chill down. They're thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine before it ignites in less than a minute. Coming up on MECO here in just a few seconds. Here's the MECO stage separation.
Main engine cutoff.
And there's
Stage
the Merlin vacuum
separation
engine.
confirmed.
And back ignition.
Some great views from Adam Bernstein, our tracking camera here at the press site. Getting ready to deploy those payload fairings momentarily. And there you see fairing separation.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there it goes. And the delay on the SpaceX feed. A little bit of a jellyfish effect this morning. Falcon 9 second stage cruises on in the pre-dawn hours here. just about 5:15 a.m. Eastern, 09:15 UTC, a little more than 3.5 minutes into this flight. Still getting some good tracking views from Adam as we cruise on into the 4th minute of this mission. Coming up, our next milestone here will be at about T plus 6 minutes and 9 seconds for that first stage entry burn. It'll effectively be the Falcon 9 first stage, slamming on the brakes, making its way towards the drone ship. Now coming up on 5 minutes into the launch here. And unfortunately, this mission was just a few minutes too early. We could have had a very nice moonrise here as the Falcon 9 was lifting off from pad 40. But it's still a very nice moonrise nevertheless. I wish all the luck in the world to all you eclipse watchers that are going to be chasing down totality in the coming days. Again, the Great American Eclipse, as it's being called, coming up on Monday, April 8th. We're now about 20 seconds away from the start of the entry burn tonight. We will endeavor to capture it with our ground tracking cameras here at the press site. But if not, of course, we will have onboard camera views from SpaceX. And there, Adam's got that entry burn. Well done.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
This burn lasting a little over 20 seconds.
Vehicles are on nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
There you see the conclusion of the entry burn in real time. SpaceX coming in on a slight delay, so that's why you're still seeing it on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
There you have the conclusion of that entry burn. Still getting some beautiful shots of the moon. Looking back at pad 40 over at Cape Canaveral. A little more than 7 minutes into flight. We're now less than a minute away from the start of the landing burn, coming up at about T plus 8 minutes and 1 second.
Vehicles are on nominal trajectory.
With that call up, both the first and the second stages continuing on a nominal flight path as intended. Falcon 9 first stage dropping rapidly in speed, less than 2,000 kilometers per hour. Speedometer plummeting
Stage
dramatically.
1 transonic. Stage 1 landing burn.
Now you see the start of the landing burn. The landing legs will be deployed in just a moment here as the views from the drone ship will pop up on the right-hand side. There we go.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown for this first stage booster, B1069 in the SpaceX fleet.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with that call for nominal orbit insertion, the Falcon 9 second stage will remain in that parking orbit until about T plus 54 minutes and 10 seconds. At that point, there will be a brief 2-second burn of that Merlin vacuum engine, setting up for Starlink satellite deployment at about T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 19 seconds. Still getting some great views of our crescent moon here. Very beautiful moonrise above pad 40. Slightly bummed that the launch wasn't delayed just a hair to see these two events converge at liftoff, but you know, them's the breaks, I suppose. And with a good liftoff and landing of booster 1069, I'm going to go ahead and take a peek back at our live chat briefly before we go ahead to our mission stats, close things out tonight. I want to thank Smooth Juice for a £5 super chat. Thank you so much, Smooth Juice. Appreciate you being with us. It says, unbelievable sound, never gets old. Thanks, Spaceflight Now from the UK. Very jealous. We are certainly more than happy to be here with you to bring you the sights and sound of the Falcon flights. As SpaceX notes, this was the 275th landing of a Falcon 9 rocket. And that's a good segue into our mission stats as we have them tracked here. This was the 14th flight of Falcon 9 booster 1069 in the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 318th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 33rd Falcon 9 flight of 2024, the 262nd Falcon booster reflight with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 34th launch of the year, including Starship Integrated Flight Test number 3. This was the 107th launch in the last 365 days, the 177th orbital launch for SpaceX from Pad 40, and the 232nd overall orbital launch from this pad. With this mission in the books, here's where we stand on the bar chart version of Falcon flights. Just a little bit into month 4, and SpaceX just about a third of a way towards catching its total number of launches from last year. Has a company goal of trying to hit 144, potentially up to 150. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 64th landing of a booster on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. This was SpaceX's 227th drone ship landing to date and the 292nd overall SpaceX booster landing, getting very close to the big 300. Finally, some industry stats. This was the 23rd launch from Florida this year, the 35th orbital launch from U.S. soil. This was the 38th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, including the 3 from Rocket Lab. So far this year, they're working on number 4 later this month. And this was the 65th orbital launch from around the world, with 2 orbital launch failures so far on the year. Taking a look at our pie chart, how it shakes out right now. US with about 58% of the pie, 38 missions and counting. China with 15, Russia in third with 5, Japan with 3, and India and Iran with 2 apiece. And as we take one last look at our own moon here, preparing for a lot of folks to head towards the heart of the United States for eclipse viewing. A lot of hotels already booked, so if you're one of those last minute folks, you may have to park, or yeah, you may have to stay in a hotel somewhere outside of totality and then drive your way in, depending on what's still available. But if you do have your heart set on seeing the eclipse this year here in the United States, we wish you all the best. Be sure you have your solar filters for whatever cameras you have. You also want to make sure you have appropriate and certified glasses to safely view both before and after totality. Don't want to see any reports of eye injuries from folks, so be very, very careful when viewing the eclipse. There are some less than reputable folks who will sell not certified solar viewing glasses. So you just want to make sure they're up to the right standards. You could ask your local astronomer what those are. If you live near a NASA installation, you can, of course, ask them as well. Taking one last beautiful look at our moon here tonight. Our next launch coming up for live launch coverage is coming tonight, as Rusty Shackelford, one of our mods, noted in the live chat. That is Starlink 8-1 going up at currently 7:31 p.m. Pacific, 10:31 Eastern, 02:31 UTC. That'll be the launch of 21 Starlink satellites with 6 direct-to-cell capable satellites on board. I want to thank our Adam Bernstein for providing some great views of not only the rocket, but the moon this evening, as it continues to rise over Florida's Space Coast, and specifically the view here at the pad at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Our thanks to moderators Rusty Shackelford and Stephanie B for helping to keep things kosher in the live chat. Our thanks as well to our editor, Stephen Young, running the technical operations of the broadcast, man in the chair tonight. And most off, thanks to you for spending part of your either late morning or late evening, early morning hours with us here for live launch coverage. I mentioned Starlink 8-1 is coming up tonight, but if you want to recap and a look back at the week that was in space news, and it has been surprisingly busy, especially when we got into the middle of the week, we do have our live weekly show coming back tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, at 4 p.m. right here on the channel. Join us for news from the press site, where we will be joined by Spaceflight Now alum Stephen Clark, as well as space reporter and digital producer for Fox Weather Emily Speck will be joining us to talk about the news of the week on the Space Beat, some of their reporting, and the big news items as well. So again, that'll be coming up today at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we hope you're able to join us for that. And with all that down and out, we're going to go ahead and sign off as we do have a busy day ahead. Probably going to catch a few winks before we start to get in motion for news from the press site. We'll see you back here at 4 p.m. for that show, and then back here a few hours after that for our coverage of the Starlink mission from Vandenberg. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Ad Lunam.